All right, welcome everyone. We've got a nice turnout. I recognize many faces, and for those that I don't, welcome. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Dr. Sarah McGee. I'm chair of the communication department. We want to thank you on behalf of not only communication, but the humanities and the Career Center, all of which have had a wonderful role in bringing everybody together and bringing our fantastic panelists together. So just a couple of things before I turn it over to our host and our panel. We've got this scheduled to go to, I know some people have things to do at 5:30 in the next classes, so the question and answer and this discussion will be done at 5:30. At 5:30, we will open it to a mingling session where anyone that wants to will be able to mingle at the back tables with our panelists, ask questions, talk about fields, careers, things. You're welcome to help yourself to food at 5:30 after the panel as we go. But we do ask we ask at all of Loyola, as this is, not just the discussion, but the question and answer session is something we want you need to stay for and engage with. We will make sure we get you out of here by 5:30 for those of you that have to leave. But we encourage everybody afterwards to feel free to mingle and meet, have a little food, and talk to our wonderful panelists. I will note, in the era of COVID-19, everybody is okay. If you want to shake hands, feel free. If not, nobody's going to be upset. Go with what you're comfortable with as we're all navigating, how we're doing this. Our panelists with you guys, just if you're comfortable as you go, but just be aware, be careful of that. But otherwise, I think we should be good. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to our host and let him take it away. We are very wonderful. He'll introduce you to the panel, but some of you know this young man sitting up here, Bobby Trossett, who is a Loyola graduate, 2017, is doing fantastic things and was wonderful enough to come back and agree to host this panel. I think you're really going to enjoy it, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bobby.
All right. What is up? Almost every seat is full. I really like that. It's a good turnout. I know some schools locally are kind of closing things down, so I know you're probably checking your phones on updates and like, wait, we have to be here? Oh yeah, you got to be here. We're going to lock you in. We're ready to go. I know a lot of you, some are seniors. I'm sure there's a good mix. I tried to recruit as many underclassmen as I could. We had a Messina outing with Eileen Huebler last night in Little Italy. Any of you here from dinner last night? Apparently I didn't do my job. Oh, in the back. Thank you for coming. But yeah, so I'm class of 2017, Bobby Trossett. I see a lot of familiar faces out there, which is awesome. We have an awesome panel here today as well. I'll just give you a real brief little description as to what life's been like since I made the walk in May of 17. Came out and realized that I don't have a job. I felt like I did every possible thing during my time here to ensure that I did have one, but somehow that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. So once I got over that, 10 days after graduating, lucky enough to have some friendships in the admission office from my time as a work study student, and I started working as like an admission assistant. And so, it was tough for me, as much as I really enjoyed working in the office, to not have one in your specific field, a job, was tough to swallow. But lucky enough, NBC Sports came calling in November of 17, and I spent about 2 years there before getting my first big break at WBAL. So we're calling it Chapter 2 and Be More. Just started in August, 7 months in, and working for the Ravens as their lead anchor on the radio. So it was a pretty good first season. And now, what a great little section over to my guy here, Dave Lang, the Director of Digital Media for the Baltimore Ravens. You may have seen his photo flashing up there during the preview. And yeah, he had a ring from their Super Bowl championship. That was something else, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was probably one of the greatest experiences of my life.
Yeah, we're going to get into all that and more for sure. Jen Barthol is here as well. We just met. She's from the Big Apple. Probably good to get out of a big city right now, being that it's a little bit claustrophobic. But she is the fashion editor at Shape Magazine. So if any of you are into that kind of thing, she's going to get into that. And more. And then Phil Caulfield and I have a kind of a cool connection. We met in Rio de Janeiro during the Olympics, and he is the senior editor at Today.com, lives in Washington, D.C. Any Today Show fans in the house besides Eileen? Oh, yeah.
Emily. A little younger. We're a little older than you guys, so it's okay.
Yep. And then, how could I forget who's above me? Because Natalie Ziegler is joining us, and she had to kind of pull a little audible on us because of, well, the coronavirus and the outbreak. But Natalie is the Chief of Science Writing, Press, and the Dissemination Branch at the National Institute of Mental Health. So I think she has bigger things to kind of take care of right now, but she's still giving us our time. Thanks, Natalie. Give it up for Natalie. I'll join us satellite.
Thanks.
So anyway, I think we'll start with you, Dave, and I kind of want you to turn back the clock on yourself here, and if you can remember the priorities that you put in place or some of the objectives or the goals that you had towards maybe your upperclassmen years at Loyola, and specifically maybe even why you landed here in the first place.
Why I landed at Loyola here? Well, so I guess when I know a lot of you, especially the underclassmen, you might not know what you want to do. You might have an idea. But when I came in, I started off thinking I wanted to be a doctor, maybe do like a pre-med thing. And I took my first bio class and quickly realized that I was not going to do this for the next 8+ years of my life. So I took a bunch of different classes, and it's funny because I took an elective. It wasn't a requirement, wasn't for any major, but I just looked fun. It was like a web class, and talking about building websites and getting into that, and kind of piqued my interest a little bit. So then I ended up majoring in communications, focused on digital media, and discovered like that was kind of my passion, like getting into graphic design and building websites, doing some coding and all. And I think I had always just worked like summer jobs or jobs on campus during the year, but when I got to the upper class years, I was really interested in finding some kind of internship or job experience where it would look good on my resume. It would provide some valuable real world experience for the chapter after Loyola. And so the summer before my senior year, I went home to northern New Jersey, and I looked up, this is back in the Yellow Pages days with the phone book. I don't know if anybody has a phone book anymore, but I looked up web design, and I emailed every single company in the area, sent them my resume, said I want to work for you this summer, and I heard back from one of them, and they actually had never had an intern before, but I became their first intern and worked for them that summer. And then after I graduated, kind of like Bobby, I had no job, no plan for what I was going to do, but they reached back out to me and said, "Hey, didn't you graduate? What are you up to?" And they called me back and hired me as a full-timer. So I was there for 2 years before I caught on with the Ravens.
Yeah, the only thing I forgot too is I should have had you started off with what's your elevator pitch as to what you're doing now. So maybe
Okay.
I'll let you do that now.
Well, so, and I don't think my bio is 100% accurate in the booklet, but I just finished my 13th season with the Ravens. I'm the director of digital media. I started out as an intern, a low-paid, no-benefits intern, and worked my way up over the years. So now I oversee all of our digital and fan engagement technologies. It's not like IT stuff, but any mobile digital technology that touches our fans. That's kind of what I have my hand in. So I oversee our website and our mobile app, and then all of our kind of like new technology, the acronym things like the VR, AR, CTV, AI, kind of like just like what's next. In my time, I've done a little bit of everything, like the jack of all trades. I started and created our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram accounts. I have written articles, shot videos, appeared on camera, so just kind of done a little bit of everything in my time there. And the world of digital has changed so much. Like when I started there, Snapchat didn't exist, and I don't think Twitter existed, so yeah. It's been a huge evolution.
You guys have been crushing those two spaces too. We got to give it up. A congrats actually for the Ravens. Complex Sports just named their social media team the #1 in the entire league out of 32 teams. I think that was a jump up from number 26 last year.
I think so.
So pretty impressive, and I know you got your hands in on that as well. All right, Jen. So why don't you start off with kind of the same thing in terms of before you get to the objectives that when you were sitting in their seats a few years back, kind of what you're up to now in New York.
Sure. So currently I'm the senior fashion editor at Shape magazine, and basically what that entails is a lot of trend forecasting. We work 3 months ahead, so I need to know what's going on in the beauty and fashion space. I do a lot of celebrity interviews, Like I said, trend forecasting, which entails working with brands. So whether it's Old Navy versus like a Christian Louboutin, I need to know every brand on the market from $50 to $5,000 and what they're promoting in the future. And then, of course, Shape is a fitness magazine. So we have the wellness component. So I'm always trying new fitness classes, new health trends, and reporting and writing on that. So all of this started, which is crazy to think, here at Loyola, because I really came in as a blank slate. I had a cousin who was 2 years before me, and she was communications, and I love to read and write. So I was like, I'll do what she's doing. And I had no idea what that was about. And I don't know if Jay Dunmore is here yet, but I got a job in the TV studio, and that was such a game changer for me because he was like, what do you like? Just, do a show, write a blog, just do something you're passionate about. So I was like, great, I love fashion. And so I started forecasting trends for college students based on runway trends, which I was not wearing anything remotely close to the runway. I was wearing sweats every day and Uggs, but anyway, he let me have fun with it. And I started this show on campus. And from that point, this was my junior year, I was like, okay, there's something here. I work on this nonstop. I would love to just pursue this, but I knew no one in fashion. I had no one in my close contact book that was at a magazine or any type of brand. So I started emailing like crazy. And my senior year, I got my first internship. Oh, sorry, my junior year, I interned at MTV, which was a stroke of luck. And it was in the assistant department, and I had to watch segments of television shows and write the reviews that they put on the TV guide. Like, it was that simple. But anyway, it was a great experience. It was New York City, and I was like, I have to come back here. I have to work in New York. So senior year, following graduation, I did 4 unpaid internships back-to-back, commuted from New Jersey, and the last one offered me a job in a magazine, and I landed the gig. This was in 2011. And so 9 years later, I'm still in the industry, which is a huge accomplishment because magazines are not doing great right now. But that being said, it all started here at Loyola, and it was just from playing around. And thank you, Jay. I don't know. I think he's coming later, but I have to.
Yeah, and I think Jay's going to be one of the many minglers that are coming in for our second portion of the night. I already see a bunch in here as well. So they're going to be just as accomplished, so I'm looking forward to hanging out with them as well. While I have you too,
yes.
It seems as if I don't have a ton of expertise in fashion.
You look great.
The socks all right? All right. Do you feel like you were in some ways, for Loyola, a trailblazer? And if you're too humble to say that, then who came before you that maybe, besides Jay, who was actually outside of Loyola, was a huge mentor? We can come back to you too.
I wouldn't say I was a trailblazer because I was, at the time, Instagram wasn't around. It was really about the blogs. And that's the fashion community that evolved outside of the actual fashion world. And I was obsessed with these blogs. I would go home after class every day and like pin my favorite outfits and mark all my favorite bloggers. So there wasn't really anything else like that at Loyola at the time, so maybe in that sense.
Sure.
But I didn't have anyone on the fashion side. I think it was really teachers like Jay who put themselves out there and just said, get creative. You don't work in fashion, make your own fashion, So, yeah, I think
Awesome.
All the props to Jay.
Cool. All right, Phil Caulfield, senior editor at today.com. Phil, you look just like you did in Rio. You know that?
It wasn't that long ago.
You don't have that base tan that you had over there, though.
True.
Why don't you go right off, stemming off of what we've been talking about?
So I work for the digital presence of the NBC's Today Show. So the idea is that the Today Show is a 4-hour television show. It's a lot of things to a lot of people. It's a little bit of news. It's a little bit of entertainment. It's a little bit of pop culture. It's a little bit of cooking segments and lifestyle. But no one watches the whole thing, right? I mean, I wasn't surprised when Bobby asked if anyone here watches the show, because again, the demographic tends to be, it's probably your parents or your older siblings. And it's kind of, maybe it's something that you sort of grew up with that your family had on in the morning or something to watch for 20 minutes. But in the age of the internet, having a 4-hour television show isn't necessarily enough. So the idea is that we, on one hand, we figure out how that television show is going to live on the internet, whether or not it's, we build news packages. If we have a newsmaker that comes on, if Joe Biden comes on and announces his running mates, or someone comes on and announces some sort of major news, we want to build news packages around that so that if you're on your phone, you're on a tablet, you're on the internet, and you want to read that story, you're coming to our site to find it, and we're really owning it. All the social media accounts, the Twitter, the Instagram, now it's TikTok, Snap, all that stuff is kind of run by my team. And that's sort of part of it. We're the kind of like the digital arm of the Today Show. The other half of it is we have our own writers and editors and photographers and video shooters that just do stuff for the web. So they tell stories that just live online, and they're built to sort of like live online. So it's something that you would watch you watch a video on your phone, or you read something on your phone or on your tablet very differently than you do on your television. So the idea is we build these stories that look and feel very much like today's stories, but they're geared towards a little bit of a younger audience, a little bit more of a mobile audience, and they're told in sort of a different way. So I kind of straddle those two worlds a little bit.
Well, we're on you, Phil, in the whole digital media and social media and online presences. Do you have any kind of insight for them in terms of, as they make their way through college and there's all kinds of activities going on in nightlife and decision making, when it comes to building your online presence, what kind of advice would you have for them?
I don't think that you should, if you want to be a journalist, and if you want to be a reporter, if you want to necessarily be on air or an editor, I don't think it's necessarily that important to have 1 million Twitter followers or to feel pressured to live on Instagram and to sort of like live out loud in a way that a lot of media personalities you see do. That is great, and I think just all of you guys, by virtue of using those tools, I'm assuming all of you guys use these tools in your daily lives just for fun, just to play with, just to post pictures and stuff with your friends, or if you're on Twitter, if that's your thing. Just by like knowing it and knowing how to use it, you're already sort of like ahead of the game. I mean, before I went to Rio in 2016, I had to get out. I was down there for the show for the Olympics. That's where I met Bobby. I had to get with a 25-year-old associate editor that works on our team and be like, you have to show me how to use Snapchat. I don't know how to use it. You know what I mean? And this is a tool that this young woman had sort of like been living with. So just the idea that you're using it, you know how to use it, you have a fluency with it. To me, that's enough. Now, I think, Bobby, I know you're very active on it. You're terrific at it, for sure. And I've seen a lot of the stuff that you do. But I don't think you have to. You don't have to sort of come into your first job with 50,000, Twitter followers or something, or like some huge Instagram presence, or be your own brand. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, and we can sort of get into it a little bit more, in my field, in journalism, and if you want to be a reporter, if you want to be out producing stuff, it's really about like what you can sort of like make with like your, what can you make like with your with the former editor for the Times? Like, what are the things that you can build? What stories are you going to bring to the table? A little bit more so.
Yeah, I got to put my phone in airplane mode every once in a while, but So let's all do a 360 turn and just give Natalie a little bit of love, because we don't want to make her. So let's go out to my guys in events in the back. Just this 360 turn. Let's wave at Natalie. Welcome her into McGuire Hall, where she used to rock the house here in Loyola. What's that?
Hi, everybody.
All right, we're waving, even though you really can't see us. But hey, so Natalie, right off the bat, I have to know what these last, I guess, couple weeks have been like for you.
So luckily, I work for the National Institute of Mental Health, and the National Institute of Mental Health is part of the National Institutes of Health, which is the largest funder of biomedical research in the world, and it's made up of 27 different institutes and centers focused on different disease areas. I'm very lucky right now not to work at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases due to the spread of coronavirus, because their communications department is being hit pretty hard by this whole thing. And the coronavirus has also played a role in why I'm not here today, because we have new travel restrictions and we've been required to cancel any meetings that basically aren't related to the coronavirus. So that's part of why I'm up here on the screen like the Wizard of Oz. But yeah, it's been really interesting. There's a lot of ad hoc calls, a lot of talks about messaging, how to communicate to the public in a way that won't panic them, but will make sure that they have the information that they need in order to hopefully stay healthy and recover. So yeah, sorry I couldn't be there in person, but yeah, and you can shake hands later, but definitely wash your hands afterwards.
Natalie, do you feel prepared for, let's face it, I think we're in a crisis of some sort. Are you prepared for this?
I mean, so one of the great things about working at the National Institutes of Health is that you kind of get early warnings that these things are coming. Because, yeah, we talk about all these things at our IC-wide meetings. And so, yeah, I'm pretty prepared. We have a lot of hand sanitizer and a lot of disinfectant and all the medications that my kids and I might possibly need. And we're not overly concerned because, as we've seen from some of the messaging from CDC and HHS, it's mostly people who are older and have underlying health conditions that have to be really concerned. But of course, the rest of us need to try not to spread it to them. So that's kind of where the crisis part comes in. But yeah, I'm luckily not over there at that institute, so I'm not having to do a lot of the work that they're having to do every day related to the communications.
And when you were Ryan to Loyola and think about your time here, were you a late bloomer in the world of health and as it pertains to your interests, or was this kind of a day one kind of thing?
No, I was, it's funny because I came to Loyola and I already knew that the things I liked to do were read and write and draw, and for some reason I decided I was going to be pre-med and major in biology and be a doctor like my dad. And I discovered after a brief stint volunteering in an emergency room that I don't like bodily fluids or touching people, and so that really wasn't going to work out. But I really did enjoy my biology classes, chemistry not so much, but definitely biology. And I had taken an effective writing course with Dr. O'Neill. She was my very first class, my very first year, my very first day of college at Loyola. And after a few weeks in her class, she'd asked me if I was majoring in communications. And I was like, no, I'm going to be a doctor. So definitely not something that I thought about straight out of the gate. But I really enjoyed the class. So then I took another one, and then I took another one. And then I started doing pretty badly in chemistry, and I was like, you know what, I need to change courses here. And so I started literally Googling health communications and science communications, like, is this a field, is this a thing? And I found the biography of John Berklow, he's still the NIH communications director. And I read a little bit about him, and I was like, oh, this sounds really, really cool. So I started looking into the internship program that he did, which was at the National Cancer Institute. And I started looking at graduate programs that would kind of help me get my foot in the door. And yeah, my first internship was actually at Care First, Blue Cross Blue Shield, the health insurance company. And so that's where I got my start. It was the summer after I graduated from Loyola. I was there for about 3 months, and then I went to American University to get my Master's of Science in Health Communications, which was a great experience, and that's actually where I networked and met somebody who worked at the National Institutes of Health. She helped me get my first internship there, which is actually at the National Institute on Aging, and then from there I got the National Cancer Institute internship. And just FYI, in case anyone's wondering, all of these were paid, so if you're interested in getting into this field, it actually can be pretty lucrative. And yeah, there's been a lot of, I've worked at a few different institutes, but right now at NIMH, I lead a whole team. We handle all the public-facing communications for the Institute. So all the press inquiries, the press releases, media availabilities. We write research highlights. We write responses to public, media, Congress, the White House. We publish and maintain about 70 titles of patient education materials in different languages. We run a big exhibits program which travels across the country. And we develop all the web and digital content, such as videos, photos, infographics, podcasts. And we manage the social media channels. So we're actually the most followed institute at NIH with over 1 million followers on Twitter. And we're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and we've just launched an Instagram account, so please follow us there. And other than that, we handle all the marketing too, so promoting the NIMH events, careers, and funding and training opportunities. So I know it's kind of long, but those are all the things.
Hey, real quickly, can you just give those social media handles once more?
Oh, so we're on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, and the username's usually NIMH.gov.
Awesome. Hey, so as they do in broadcasting, we have some breaking news. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. McGee.
I'm sure I'm seeing all of your faces as you're checking your email. Loyola has just made the announcement that they are going to close and go online. Please try to just, I know, breaking news in the middle. So we just ask that, please kind of maybe try to, 5:30 we will all do it, but just, we will all survive, everything will be good, but just kind of, if everybody, I know you're checking your phones and that, but if we can just ask you to kind of just hang there for the next, 20 minutes or so, we'd appreciate it, but it's all good. Everybody's going to be fine, but I just noticed that, just bring the attention back, but just, we'll be good. So all of us are good. Everything is good. It's breaking news. This is life happening. So I'll turn it back over now.
Yeah. In other words, I read that as 3 weeks of spring break, correct? You guys just got back, didn't you? This is I'll tell you what, this is something.
It's something.
That's right.
It's making alternate plans.
That's right. It's funny, I was wondering if like Bieber was on campus or something. Everybody was buzzing, but okay, all right. Let's hone it back in while you make your second spring break plans. But let's try and get something out of this second portion. We'll swing it back to Dave, and I think it would be helpful to maybe kind of hone in on the things that you were doing to enhance your portfolio, I guess, right? Like, how did you make sure that you were the most eligible candidate, let's say, by the time you were walking across the stage?
Sure. So I think it's very appropriate with this audience here to share the story that when I came here as a freshman in 2001, I did a pre-orientation program. So I got here 3 days before the rest of the freshman class, and there were 16 of us in the group. And one of the guys in my group, his name is Jay O'Brien. So I met him day -3 of freshman year, and he was the one who was working at the Ravens that gave me a call when I was working at my full-time job and said, hey, I know that you've got a full-time job and all. I don't know if you're interested in moving back to Baltimore or getting into the world of sports, but we have this internship opening, and I think you'd be great for it, if you're interested. And I was kind of thinking to myself how much I love sports and I wanted to get into sports. And also I had a lot of friends in Baltimore, so it was that Loyola connection truly that was my foot in the door really. And then even him vouching to my boss, like, I know this guy, he's good, and that went a long way. I'd say in the world of sports, like internships, everybody up here I feel like has mentioned multiple internships, and that is really the key. I was an outlier because I really did not have internships in sports, but in addition so I had kind of this dual passion, sports, but also the digital media space, the online space. So I was working my job during the day, but at night and on weekends, my spare time, I was building a website. I'm a big New York Mets fan. Feel sorry for me. But I was building this website it was for New York baseball, so Mets and Yankees, kind of like a fan site. just kind of doing it for fun. I wasn't sure where it was going to go, what I was going to do with it. But then when I applied for the Ravens, I put that down on my resume, and I kind of didn't really think it was any big deal. I mean, I had just launched it, had 0 following. But my boss said in the interview that was kind of a crucial part, because it showed, A, that I was capable of doing these things, like I had the skills to do this kind of stuff, and B, it was something that I did have a passion for, that I wanted to do. I wasn't applying because I was a Ravens fan or just because I wanted to work in the NFL, that this is something that I'm spending my spare time doing, and I'm not getting paid to do it. So it just showed her that it's something that I was passionate about, and that's really ultimately what you want, in really any field, like somebody that's going to be passionate about the job.
And you've been really visible. I mean, we talked before I went on. You've spoken in Knott Hall before, and so clearly you felt the connection through Loyola in some kind of circumstance.
Yeah, I've kept in touch, and I love coming back and parlaying any wisdom to students and helping you guys.
Jen, I kind of want to see what you have to say, and something similar to what I asked Phil in terms of your online presence. And just more so, I guess, brand more so than anything else.
Well, fashion is unique in terms of editors competing with Instagram influencers. That's really the future of fashion. People want to be digital. Not only do they want to see a face, they want to know what your passions are, who you're dating. It's become this 360 view of a person that didn't exist before. So knowing that, I had to become comfortable with sharing certain parts of myself online, posting things that were relevant to my field, and I make a true effort to do that. That being said, I agree with you. You don't need 50,000 followers. No one needs that. But I do think you need a clear idea of a visible resume, if you think about it that way, what you want someone Googling you to see, and how that transfers to your job. For example, like you did with the sports. I feel like it has to be relevant to what you're achieving, but I will say I made an effort early on. As soon as Instagram became a thing, I started uploading photos. I just started doing it, and it wasn't perfect at first. It's probably scary if I scroll back a little, but now I do have somewhat of a following, and it's made a difference for me. I will say, coming into it now, I think it's more about understanding the tools than necessarily being an influencer. I don't think that's necessary, but I do think it's important to submerge yourself in that, because it does make a difference.
Sure. Phil, we'll come right back to you since you already answered that question. But Natalie, I guess, does your brand and your online presence, when it comes to your specific field, how important is that, and how vital is that?
So we have to be incredibly careful with our brand, because mental health is a very sensitive topic. The field of science is actually relatively new compared to a lot of the other disease areas. So we need a brand that looks authoritative, one that people will trust. We want people to understand that mental disorders are brain disorders. These are medical conditions. Like, there's a whole slew of things that we consider with everything that we post. And we actually do have a pretty sizable style guide that we put together that guides everything from how things look to the tone and the style of our writing. For all the different kinds of pieces that we put together, because it's really important that people trust that we're giving them objective scientific information, because the stakeholders aren't just the public, it's also Congress and the media and healthcare providers, and we need all of these different people to trust what we're saying so that they can apply it.
Phil, in terms of internships or specific entry-level jobs when it comes to maybe Today.com or anything in the field, what do you think is realistic for, let's say, a junior or senior to chase after?
You mean in terms of positions?
Yeah.
I mean, I ran the internship program at Today for 3 years, and we would have sophomores, juniors, and seniors usually coming into work for us, whether it was a couple days a week. Many of the times they were students from around the New York area. I will say, in journalism in particular, once you get out of school, and I know this can be a very difficult thing to think about, but one caveat is if you get out of school and you want to work in a newsroom or you want to work in the media field, don't work for free. That is, I think it's a really, sort of negative side of the business that unfortunately sort of like still kind of permeates throughout journalism a little bit. This kind of like, well, you'll get clips or you'll get sort of, experience or you'll get exposure or something like that. I just think I just think if you get out of school and you're looking for jobs and it's no pay, you shouldn't take it. Because it favors a certain kind of person who can afford to do that. And it's not right to have people working, even if they don't have experience, if they're trying to get experience without compensation. So school credit is one thing, but I think it's something to look out for. Not sure how much it exists, but when I was sort of starting out, like the kind of, without naming names, but like the HuffPos of the world would sort of, back in the day, sort of when it was kind of just getting started, would have a lot of those types of things. And I think it's really ugly and I think it's really unnecessary. And the more and more people do it, it'll sort of perpetuate it. You know what I mean? So,
sure. No, that resonates with me for sure. Oh yeah.
Real quick, I feel like my attitude that I had was an internship was something you did when you were in school, summers, during the semester. But then once you graduated, that was time for a full-time job. And like what I've learned and what I've heard other panelists say is, and I'm not talking about, the unpaid, but there are paid internships out there, but a lot of people do multiple paid internships before they land that first full-time job, and that was something I never realized when I was in your position.
Yeah, I was an intern at 26. My first internship in journalism and media was actually at Inside Lacrosse, which used to be headquartered in the Inner Harbor down here, just through sort of like a guy that I knew. I had shot on my resume. I had a job at like a startup doing marketing in DC for a couple years. And I was 26 years old. I mean, I was older than the guy that was managing me. And then I had internships up until, almost being 30. So if it's, if you're looking to get into media, it's like you might kind of have to do 3 or 4 of them. And you shouldn't think that you're too old. Oh, I'm 23 years old. I have a college degree. I had all these great internships. It's just an internship. It's like, it's such a valuable way to get your foot in the door. And don't like listen to that sort of mouse that's on your shoulder saying, oh, but you're 25, you're 24, you should be a senior producer or something by now. It's like everyone kind of has their own path. And if you think an internship is going to get you a little bit closer to what you want to do, it's valuable to take it for sure. But don't work for free.
Hey, a reminder too that
if I can add on.
Yep.
If I can add on to that, I completely agree with all of that, which is why I've never worked for free. All my internships have been paid. And one of the last internships I had, they asked me if I wanted to renew the internship. And I told them no, they'd have to hire me because I wasn't going to do another 6 months as an intern when I already at that point I had a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. Like, you have to know your worth. And they hired me. So, I mean, the internships really, they get you in the door, you get to meet people, and they give you a chance to demonstrate what you can do. And once you've really demonstrated that, like, that's it. And if they're not going to hire you, move on to the next one. So, I mean, that's my feeling on it anyway.
And Natalie, staying right with that, the kind of the same question that I just posed for them, what's a realistic position right out of the gate or a potential internship that someone that's pursuing a field that you're into could potentially get into?
So the federal government has a bunch of different internship programs and fellowship programs. I'd say that they start looking for people probably who are juniors and seniors and above. So, and you find people at all different stages, all different ages who are getting into this field. I was in a fellowship program. And there were people who were twice as old as me, and there were people who were 10 years younger than me, and we were all in the program, basically trying to get a leg up. So I think most of the folks in the audience can probably start looking around now for the internships they want, in part because you want to know what the requirements are for those internships. I know for NIH and for science writing and health communications, sometimes they're looking for certain courses that you've taken or certain trainings that you've taken. And if you wait to look, you're going to get to that point where you're applying and realize you don't have those credentials. So I think it's good to look early and kind of plan ahead so that you're ready for those applications.
Awesome. I got a quick little comment, but while I do that, just think about, we're about to open this thing up to questions, our panel. So just think if you wrote something down, start fishing that up to ask away, drill us. But I had a comment, I can resonate really with what Phil was talking about in terms of, whether it's your upperclassmen years or right when you came out, don't work for free. I'll say this, I did a lot. And I think that when there's a little bit of an asterisk next to a wannabe broadcaster, because in some ways you're doing your time so much that it's just worth it because you need to get reps in order to put together a tape. And it's not just broadcasting either. There could be multiple different overlapping components inside communication. So only you, though, you're only going to know when you're being taken advantage of. And so I needed to take a look at myself in the mirror at some point, I think probably a year after I graduated Loyola, and I realized, all right, I got to have a little bit more respect for myself, what I'm doing, where I want to go. And I urge you to remember that in your journey here, whether that's something that you have to go through during your time at Loyola. Reps are so important in whatever you're doing, but they're not the be-all, end-all as long as you have a solid-looking portfolio that has depth and multiple layers. So that's what I would say on that. But we're going to go ahead and open up, unless you guys have anything else that you want to get to before that you're dying to get into. Are we good to go?
We've got a real big mic, so if you have a question, just kind of raise your hand, and our mic will come to you. So please ask away. Questions?
Looks like we got front left, my left.
Cool, we got one, two. Hand up so he can see where you're going. Good go. All right, go. First question.
So if you're not really certain about what kind of media you want to work in, so you're thinking about like either news or sports or entertainment, would you suggest kind of keeping that more widespread or kind of focus on one area until you know that you don't want to do it or you do want to do it?
I think when you're open to different fields, I think experience is the only way you're going to know if something makes you click, if something works for you, if it's something you want to explore. I think the best way is by doing. That's my motto. If you can get an internship in any of those, or like I said, find something on campus that speaks to that and start exploring it that way, I think that's a great way to see what resonates and what works for you.
I would also say, when you're applying, you want to demonstrate your skills, what you can do in that relevant field. It almost doesn't matter if you're going to do sports or fashion or entertainment, because, like, to use my world as an example, you're not going to be asked to come in and draw up plays, or run routes, or scout college players, because you're not applying to be a coach or a player or a scout. If you want to be a writer, you want to be a video person on camera, like those are the skills that you need to demonstrate, and I feel like they're pretty transferable across whatever area you want to focus on.
Thanks for your question, appreciate it. And then I probably forgot to, when you do ask a question, why don't you give us your name and your class year and maybe even what you're studying if you're up for it.
Hi, my name's Isabel Garrity. I'm a senior communication PR ad major. I feel like all you guys kind of touched on the different platforms and whatnot, and how it's essential for companies to be on all these platforms, whether they're emerging or whatnot. In terms of your company or organization's mission, how do you really determine if something like TikTok is worth and viable to your brand? And how do you find your place in all these different platforms coming about?
Okay. I think for shape, it's important to know your demographic. So for us, it's 18 to 35. So all of us that are in that demographic, our digital team, we're constantly watching these market trends and what people are using. Are we diving into TikTok necessarily? No. But us as employees, we're playing with all of these things, we're trying them. So the second that shape needs to be a part of it, I'm like, hey guys, I've been on this for weeks, I know how to do it. So I think it's important whether your company necessarily needs this platform, you're ahead of those trends and you're always exploring.
We kind of have a motto that we've used for a decade, which is be where your fans are. So obviously we're always trying to grow our fan base. And if people are spending their time on a particular social media platform, then we feel like we need to have a presence there. We did launch the TikTok channel recently, which I think we have more followers there than on Snapchat. But one of our goals organizationally is to reach out to the younger demographics. So that is the perfect way to do that. And you realize that when you're trying to target all these different audiences, going to those different channels is the way to do that. And I realize it could be different, like the Today Show, if you have a certain demographic that you're trying to reach, maybe it doesn't make as much sense.
I think it actually goes back to something Jen was talking about a little bit earlier when she was talking about exploring Instagram and sort of finding her voice there. It's like, it comes down with all these things. I think it just comes down to having a point of view. It's kind of like, what are you saying on there that's sort of like unique to the way that you sort of think about it. Like, so for the Today Show, just because we're talking about TikTok, we've started using it, but it's almost like we give it to the anchors and they almost kind of make fun of themselves sort of doing it, They are a little bit in on the joke that they are, sort of middle-aged people that aren't like the demographic for this tool, but they figured out sort of a way to use it so that it's kind of funny. It's sort of like, it's like a funny, silly moment among sort of all the seriousness, but it's sort of like, it's just about having a point of view on it. How are you, and with all these things, how are you using it in a way that's sort of different or unique to the way that you think about things or the way you see whatever your subject matter is?
And if I can chime in, so for us, the process is, so we're a government agency. Everything comes with paperwork. And in some ways it's good because it forces us to really, really think about what channels will help us achieve whatever our goals are. We have to do a significant amount of market research to prove that the audience that we want to reach is on a particular channel. Then we have to do significant research to see if that audience will be receptive to health information on that channel, because that's not always the case. And we fill out a whole bunch of forms explaining what our purpose is, what our goals are, our target for how many followers, how much engagement we want to hit by certain deadlines. And if we don't meet those, then we have to sunset it. So there's a lot of thought that goes into every channel that we create. So we probably won't have a TikTok. I can't imagine folks are really looking for their health information on TikTok. Maybe, I don't know. That might change in 5 years. But for right now, we try to have at least some evidence base for launching new channels.
What other questions do we have? I just downloaded TikTok for what it's worth. A little late to the game.
Hi, I'm Diana Jasny. I'm a digital media major in class of 2022. And I was wondering, when I'm looking for internships online, some of the criteria and information seems kind of intimidating, and I kind of shy away from it. I was wondering if any of you have experienced that and what you did to overcome that.
I might kick it off real quick. Yeah, go ahead, Natalie.
You can go first.
No, ladies first.
Okay. So I found that a lot of jobs I've applied to, I don't have all of the things that are listed on the bullet for what you need to have for the job. I think it's very rare that anybody has everything that's in the job announcement. And now as a supervisor and somebody who actually can hire, I can tell you that that is our wish list. And we are aware that we're not going to get everything in one person. That would be incredibly rare. So I would say don't be intimidated. I would pay more attention to what the job is and whether or not you can demonstrate that you can do those things, even if you haven't done them a lot in the past. For example, in the job I'm in now, I've I had never been a supervisor, and technically they were asking for 5 years of supervisory experience. So I had to say, well, I haven't been a supervisor, but I have been leading teams for X number of years, and these are the things that the teams have achieved. And that was good enough. So I think knowing that those job announcements are sometimes more wish lists and you have to have all of these things is important to keep in mind.
The first thing that comes to mind on my end is
You lose me? Sorry.
applying to like 100 different internships to me is counterintuitive. Like just trying to get the application done so that it's submitted is counterintuitive. I would challenge you to, and this could be me speaking in what I've gone through in broadcasting, but I think this is communication as a whole and outside of it, and that is, I would challenge you to try your absolute hardest to find a way, try and infiltrate your way into said company that you're chasing after, and try and set up an informational call or a LinkedIn interaction, messages back and forth. So something that's just gonna make you more than one out of however many are chasing after this, right? That way, there's like almost, it's weird, right? Let's say you submitted 20 applications for an internship today for this summer. And you have this feeling of like, okay, it's in, it's done. I actually don't want you to be feeling like that, because you have no idea. I mean, you have no idea if that's even going to be looked at, and probably it may not. Chances are that it's not. So I would challenge you, whether it's LinkedIn, picking up the phone and calling, have that old soul mentality to you, right? We're always going to be. I'm a millennial, right? We're always going to be stereotyped for not wanting it enough, taking shortcuts, being too social media savvy, our heads are too much in our phones. Reverse that stereotype, buck that trend. That's what I try and do every single day. And I think if you can try to do that, it's going to go. Hopefully, it's not going to work out every time, but that might get you. Maybe it gets you a phone call. Maybe it gets you an email back. You guys have anything on that?
Just don't be intimidated by those bullets, that are in the job description. I mean, 2 years ago, I hired an intern who was to be a writer reporter for us, and she was a phlebotomist. So do you know what that is? She draws blood in a doctor's office. But she had been doing that for a decade or so, and she wanted to get into health writing. And the in-person interview, she had a great presence. She was obviously enthusiastic. A lot of that personality stuff about being enthusiastic, researching your subject, can go farther than whether or not you have the quote-unquote 5 or 10 years required experience for a job, for sure. So apply for it and try to get a face-to-face thing or something.
Great question.
I would agree with like reaching out to folks on LinkedIn, because I know there's a lot of people in this room. It's very rare that I would not respond back to somebody on LinkedIn and give them some tips for applying to federal jobs, which if you've ever done it, which I'm guessing most of you haven't yet, it's actually pretty tricky to do. And so you almost need to know somebody who can guide you through the application process. So I would say, yeah, reach out to the people on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me, and if you're interested in science writing, I can at least point you in the right direction.
I'm Stefan. I'm a senior journalism major. I guess, how do you got in the world of journalism? How is it different reporting on like a breaking news story compared to a longer form? Like, we just had a pretty breaking news story like on campus like 15 minutes ago with the whole virus thing. So how does that differ in like a fast-paced like newsroom environment to react to that compared to maybe like a longer form kind of journalistic story?
So I worked for the New York Daily News for 6 years, doing exactly what you're describing, being a breaking news reporter. A lot of it is web first, literally 4 paragraphs and a picture and a headline, and hit publish. You'd be surprised how often, these stories are not necessarily going through editors. it's like it's a lot of the times it's largely on the reporter themselves to make sure that the copy's clean and that they have all the facts and that everything's sort of tight, sort of from the get-go. And then you just kind of like, as soon as that story's live, you kind of just like keep sort of churning, whether it's like picking up the phone, making phone calls, getting callbacks from sources, emails, that kind of stuff. A lot of it in the digital age too is taking from other sources. So I mean, if Loyola closing down was a story that NBC News up in New York was interested in, there are reporters up there that are pulling from WBAL and sort of like the local guys down here on the ground. It's sort of unfortunate, but that's kind of the way of the world these days. Linking back and sourcing and citing and all that stuff. But all those guys are always sort of like reading the locals to see what's going on and perhaps pulling, X fact or Y sort of like little tidbit or something to cite back. Longer form stuff, I mean, I don't know if anyone else has any. Your longer form stuff will come from, if you want to be a breaking news reporter, your longer form stuff will grow out of your day-to-day reporting. You will meet someone who gives you a quote that you can use for one story, but then talking to them, you'll understand they kind of have an interesting backstory. That's kind of like that reporter notebook mentality where you have that notebook in your back pocket and something kind of goes off in your head. The sources you meet and the stories you kind of cover day to day that are 500 words or 600 words or something like that, those will translate into the larger feature piece that you want to write, just from the people that you're meeting and the sources you're developing and that kind of stuff. I don't know if anyone else has anything on it.
I think that covered it. Did you have any other follow-ups? Yeah, go ahead, Natalie.
Yeah, I was going to say that we're on the other side of it. So I'm not a reporter, but we work with reporters. Probably our biggest story of the year was the one on 13 Reasons Why and the suicide ideation. And a paper came out, and we had to work with reporters, I think the Friday before the paper was going to be released, and I think we worked with about 50 of them. And it's just amazing how quickly they were able to put together stories. We wound up having a press conference because there were just too many inquiries. And I don't know, I applaud folks who can work like that all the time. I can't, but they really play a big role in helping us get the message out.
Natalie, since I think it would be a little bit tricky for you to mingle, just wanted to say thank you. We'll give you a round of applause.
Thank you. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, guys. But reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Awesome, yeah, and seriously, best of luck with everything as well. I imagine this is rather hectic. So thank you, Natalie Ziegler. And if you are scheduled to be a mingler here with us today, maybe stand or wave or both. Everybody's in the house. Some familiar faces, some recent graduates, among others. So we're also going to, our panelists up here are also going to, we're all going to hang around for you. I would love to get together, and there's some tables out there. You got some waters and some snacks. So really looking forward to it. Thanks for bearing with us during all those breaking news. We'll catch you in a bit.